So about a year ago, during VETA 2011, I made a video called Canadian Politics for Dummies. I just wanted to see how it would be to explain Canadian politics. I wanted to remake the video in better quality, more succinctly, and more aptly for the current political climate, which is significantly different to how it was a year ago. And that's where this video comes in. So without further ado, here is Canadian Politics for Dummies version 2.0. This video has the same disclaimer as the last video, which is that this is a very general overview of the political system. I don't want it to be that complicated. I'm not going to go into nuances or even opinions and theories. I just want people to understand the system because I think it's really important to understand how our democracy works. So the number one thing you need to know about the Canadian political system is that Canada is a constitutional monarchy. Now this means that the Prime Minister is not our head of state. Our head of state is in fact the Queen in England with the crown and the weird family. But because the Queen does not live in Canada all the time, she appoints a representative to stand in for her while she's not in the country. This representative is called the Governor-General, and he is appointed by the Queen on the advice of the Prime Minister. Our current Governor-General is David Johnston, who's been in the position since October 2010. Technically, the Governor-General has veto power over pretty much everything that happens in the country, and the key point here is that the Governor-General is in fact the person who controls who is Prime Minister in the end. So the Prime Minister then is a person appointed by the Governor-General. Usually this is the leader of the party with the most seats in the House of Commons, but conceivably the Governor-General could appoint any party leader to be Prime Minister. Now in Canadian Parliament there are two main bodies that you need to know. First of all is the Senate. Now the Senate is made up of 105 senators who are appointed by the Governor-General on the advice of the Prime Minister. So that makes them not really non-partisan because they are appointed by the Prime Minister and he can pick who he wants his senators to be. After appointment, senators stay in power until they're about 75 years old, and their role is to approve and regulate bills that get passed in the House of Commons. So a bill must be approved in the Senate before it can be passed into law. Now, I won't talk much more about the Senate, partly because I don't really know a lot about it, but also because as citizens of Canada we don't really have any power to influence the Senate. The second body is where the real action happens, and this is the House of Commons. The House of Commons is made up of 308 members of Parliament, or MPs, who are elected by us, Canadian citizens, in 308 political ridings, or regions, across the country. So wherever you live, you are a part of a riding. Now, each riding only gets one MP, regardless of the number of people in it, but the ridings in the country are distributed roughly proportional to population. So when an election is called, candidates from each party are named in the ridings, and on election day, voters, that's us, go to our polling stations and we vote for who we want to be our Member of Parliament. We're voting here for who we want to represent our riding, our geographical region, in the House of Commons. So the key point here is we're not voting for who we want to be Prime Minister. We are simply voting for who we would like to represent us in the House of Commons. So at the riding level, elections kind of make sense, and they function on a simple plurality principle, which is also called first past the post, which basically means whoever gets the most votes wins. The winner does not necessarily need to have an absolute majority, so they don't necessarily need to have more than 50% of the votes, but they do need to have more votes than anyone else has. So, the candidate with the largest number of votes in the riding wins the seat, becomes the MP, and heads off to the House of Commons. Now where it gets more complicated is in adding up those seats. So over the course of the election day, the media is following which party wins which seats. The seats add up as the votes are counted. So for example, if a Liberal MP wins a riding, then the seat for that riding goes to the Liberal Party and is counted towards the final tally. So at the end of the day, the party who wins the election is the party who has the most seats in the House of Commons, and the leader of that party is generally named by the Governor-General to become the Prime Minister, become the head of our government, and run our country with the help from his cabinet. Again, though, the key point here is that we are not voting for our Prime Minister, we're simply voting for our Member of Parliament. Now, as I said before, there are 308 seats in the House of Commons. In order for a party to have what we call a majority government, it must hold more than 155 of those seats, so that's just roughly half the House. In a majority government, the governing party has an absolute majority of the seats because it has more than 50% of the seats in the House, and it can basically pass whatever bills it likes because it has the majority of the House. In the past, Canada has also had a minority government. This is when the party with the most votes does not have an absolute majority, so it does not have more than 155 seats in the House. And in this case, we say that the party has won a plurality of the seats, so the most seats of any party, but not more than half. These situations require the support of other parties when legislation needs to be passed, and also requires that the governing party have what we call the confidence of the House. The confidence of the House being that the rest of the House of Commons must agree with what's going on. So once all these people are elected, then they have debates and try and pass bills and legislations in the House of Commons. During debate in the House of Commons, the Speaker of the House is essentially the person who rules. He presides over the House, makes sure everyone follows the rules, calls on individual members of Parliament to speak, and ensures that members of each party get fair time to talk. Currently sitting in the House of Commons is Canada's 41st Parliament. This is a majority government led by the Progressive Conservative Party, who are in turn led by our Prime Minister, Mr. Stephen Harper. The official opposition is the New Democratic Party of Canada, and the leader of the opposition is Thomas Mulcair. The other three parties representing Canadians in the House of Commons are the Liberals, led by their interim leader Bob Rae, the Bloc Québécois, led by Daniel Payet, and the Green Party, led by Elizabeth May. And so those 308 members of Parliament representing us Canadians do their best to run our country. So there you go, that's pretty much the basic system of how the Canadian Parliament works. I hope you learned something, and I will see you again soon. P.S. I've been thinking I might make some other Canadian political videos. I especially want to make one about Quebec and the whole Quebec situation, and also perhaps the shuffle that happened after last year's election. If there's anything else you'd like me to talk about, please let me know, because ideas for videos are always welcome.